You've tuned into Bellingham Podcast Media Tech for the week of July 9, 2017, episode 44. From the northwest of the northwest, I am Chris Powell.
And from the city by the Salish Sea, I'm AJ Barce. On this episode, Chris dives into his Whole30 and what that means. I dive into my Whole 100 and you'll find out what that means. All that and more next on BPM Tech.
Whole 100, huh? Does that love 100%?
Oh, I think we give our whole 130% every episode, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm just great. I'm going to just stop with the formalities. We got some celebration. We got some celebrating to do. All right.
Okay.
So now you have played this off, and it's got to be shared, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My podcast partner in crime, AJ Barce, with this episode has done in his career 100 podcasts. Da 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 da. Hey,
bacon.
So congratulations, AJ. This is your 100th podcast.
Thank you, Chris.
The question on everyone's mind right now is, where did the other 56 come from?
So long ago in a galaxy far, far away.
I'm sorry.
I'm Han Solo and I shot first. No, so previously, the whole reason why I got into podcasting is much like we said on our origin episode, our first episode. Episode 0, 1,
yeah.
1.5, whatever we named it. I was a kid of the airwaves. I was one of those weird kids that grew up with parents that were on ham radio. I've been talking around the world since I was like 8. And I love microphones. Like, I always figured out how to say something, when to say it, sometimes not say it correctly, and enunciate, and with our sibilant sounds. I've always grokked that stuff. And previously, when in my career, I was working for our neighbors to the north, the Lummi Nation. Hello, Lummi.
Hello, Lummi.
Ike Squitchiel. And while I was out there, I started a little show called LNPR, Lummi Nation Podcast Radio. And it was really cool because, one, this was during the era where podcasts were very much the wild, wild west. There was not that much content out there. And
that was back in the days of like Adam Curry, the Podfather.
Yeah. Netcasts you love, from
right.
people you trust, Leo Laporte. You know, there wasn't a lot of content, and the content that was out there had very niche audiences. And LNPR came out of a necessity of trying to get weekly news out in between episodes of their television broadcast and their newspaper, the Squall Quall. And so I turned to podcasting because at this time, the iPad 1 was released.
Oh, yes.
And that was a really big bump. Like, here's people getting digital books and getting used to digital content. And so I threw out the idea of a podcast, and it caught hold. And so we ran with it on a scrappy crew, and I brought in hosts from the community. My brother from a different mother, as I always called him, Keith Tom, which, Keith, if you're listening, hey, bro.
Hey, Keith.
Keith's really cool. He's gone on, and he's actually now the founder of a cool screen printing company here in Bellingham called Salish Screen Printing. Sorry, Keith, I haven't swung by your shop. But I met these really cool people of different walks of life, and they had different views, kind of like our saying of the show, news and views in the city of subdued excitement. With LNPR, I brought in people from culture, and they would speak about the language or bring it about sports or the youth or whatever. And I just got into that role and rhythm. And when I started, I really wanted to do 100 episodes.
Ah, yes.
I just wanted 100. Anyway, my time fell short over there, and I never got to it. But we split off, and we did LNPR and the Bolo Report, which was a report from the police department. And just any news and views that we could pump out every week we did. Stitcher even gave us a shout out, because there's not a lot of tribal podcasts. Mm-hmm. They hooked me up with some swag and stuff and some promo, and it was just really cool time. And then you came around with your rant, and you're like, I want one podcast episode.
And that would be 45. But anyway, yeah.
Right. And so that's where it went. And I'm just glad that I finally hit my mark a decade later of getting my 100th episode. And so that's why I was really excited, and kind of dawned on me that 44 was going to be it after you summarize all of the various shows I've been on.
Well, congratulations on a century 100 mark of doing letting your voice be heard, whether it be for the Lummi Nation or for Bellingham at large.
Thank you.
And I've thoroughly appreciated your knowledge that you gained from the previous 56 and how to get a fairly seamless workflow in getting this show Bellingham Podcast Media Tech on the air, available for people to download on their mobile phones, or if you happen to be tuning by radio, 102.3 FM in Bellingham, KMRE
Low power
community radio. And so all of that work that goes behind the scenes, kudos. This is fun stuff.
Groovy.
So that was that the 100 you were referring to.
That is my 100.
Right,
this is
cool.
my 100.
So as we are, here's to 100 more.
Oh yeah.
Cheers. So,
Cheers.
As we transition from 100 to 30, my lovely wife and I decided in late June to undertake not a diet per se, but something to kind of hit game reset on our bodies, because we have people at work or in our social life that have had very good results with a Whole30 meal plan. Now, there are plenty of diets out there. Please consult your doctor if you're ever going to try anything, something like that. I am not a doctor, but
nor do we play one on podcast.
Not at all. So anyway, we got the book Whole30. Basically, to break it down, what this meal plan, and it's not a diet, what this meal plan talks about is you want to have a lot of protein. So meat, beef, chicken, fish, pork,
the four major food groups, apparently.
The fantastic
meat.
The fantastic four of protein are edible. You can have that. Fruits and vegetables, but, and here's the awful but that has been the challenge for my lovely wife and me: no grains,
Ooh.
Which means rice or quinoa or whatever. No pasta.
Right.
No carbohydrates. No sugar, and I mean no sugar. No alcohol.
Well, that would be sugar.
Right. And there was something else. Very, very few fats or oils. Olive oil is good. And some, you can't have, no dairy.
Oh, gotcha.
But you can have clarified butter, which is this wonderful process of taking like a regular few stick of butters, heating it up, and then straining it through cheesecloth.
So it removes the cream.
Yeah. And you only have fat, which is wacky. So anyway,
drinking fat by the gallon.
So this has been a little bit of an experience. We're about more than a third of the way through. And I can't say that I'm frolicking in the meadow right now from the results. However, I just wanted to see the process, wanted to support my wife who wanted to give this a go. And it is a bit of an arduous process. Reason being, when you're dealing with fruits, vegetables, and meats, for the most part, maybe olive oil and some balsamic vinegar come over to visit. It is an absolute monumental task for food preparation.
I can imagine.
And, we are a society that can bop into fill in the blank of your favorite grocery store and pick up a prepackaged meal to consume. No, this takes chopping, slicing, mixing,
using the kitchen.
Using the kitchen, yes, which we do.
I know you do.
Yeah. But it's not like you can go to your favorite restaurant of choice and grab a container of chow and shove it in your face. We have to do some like deliberate, premeditated thought on what we're going to put into our mouths. And I enjoy my energy drinks. Can't have that.
Right.
Like
high sugar.
Coffee. I've decided like during these 30 days, I'm going to just give up caffeine, even though
again.
But regular coffee's permissible.
Yeah.
I didn't say caffeine, but you see, also one of the side effects of the Whole30, you get a little bit of brain fog.
I can see.
And so my typical articulation and quick-witted, quick thinking synapses, they're taking a nap right now.
So this is the Whole30 kryptonite.
Yeah. But just to talk about, things with, if I have joint inflammation or there have been those that have contributed that they have stopped snoring. And that would be very helpful for my wife if this actually happens to me, that I can decrease in my snoring, if you know what I'm saying. So, and plus just to see what happens and see, go through the process. So for those of you out there that are, I'm not saying everyone should do this, because quite frankly, I did not eat a Domino's pizza every day and chug a 2-liter of soda every day. We kind of eat healthy to begin with. But here's what happens when you eliminate carbs and sugars and stuff, and just get down to it's not paleo, because paleo has some carbohydrate type grains in it, I believe. But it's just kind of getting back to some basics and just seeing after 30 days, you would integrate something in your life. And for me, it's going to be rice because I loves me sushi. Loves me some sushi, but I can't have it with the rice. And if I have the rice, what will happen?
Right.
If I have a dessert, let's just say, I throw down on something, will I throw up? Will the sugar have that much of a reaction?
Well, what I see, this falls into the vein of something that we've talked about a few times on the show, and that's this concept of biohacking, like technology or methodologies that we apply to either better enhance our physiology or our mentality or our longevity. This is one of those things where, like you've said ample times, that we are not doctors, nor do we play them on podcast, and this is not a diet. But it's one of those things where you're trying this out. Like you said, you've already felt a mental fog. Is it going to persist? Are you going to get out of the haze, or are you just going to reintegrate and be like, yes, give me my sushi?
According to the book, according to what they say, meaning the authors of the book and others who have contributed, because tens of thousands of people have done this. It's a very popular book and meal plan.
Sure.
There is a period where you have various things happening to your body, some of which involve the bathroom, and some of which involve the inability to think. But as you continue and as you approach the end of it, your body's in a certain lighter state.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I want to have an enhanced state of consciousness or not. I just want to see what happens.
Yeah.
And so, we're sticking out. And for those of you that are wanting to improve yourself, to give it a try and do something, take a look. Go to Barnes & Noble here in Bellingham on Meridian Street in the corner of Bakerview Meridian.
Or Village Books.
And take a look at the cooking section or the diet section and just see what might be out there. Are there ways that you, by eliminating something, and that's the biggest part, folks, because my wife loves her decaf coffee with cream.
Ooh, got it.
Yeah,
Got
that
it.
with part, got to be without. And
she's part of my clan now.
Yes, and so she's tried almond milk. Can't say it's been an absolute, wonderful thing, but we are making sacrifices for a set period of time. And it's not the end of the world. You're not in a prison term. It's a month, and we'll see what happens. And in the summertime, there's barbecue. There's a whole lot of other social activities going on. There's a lot of beer gardens if you've been to Ski to Sea or 4th of July.
Or every other weekend.
In Bellingham. That is big stuff to do out there. Eating is our culture. Eating is what we do.
America.
And so if you take your time and eliminate, and I eliminated caffeine, junk food. There were still some sugars in the sauce that I put on.
Yeah. But I mean, you held tight to that because it drove me nuts for a while when we were recording and we're sitting in a coffee shop and you're drinking water. And
I got healthier water. It's super. Caffeine, sugar, junk food, and soda. I gave up for 3 months, and it was tough. But you know what? Made it through.
Props to you. You clung on to it.
And so we're going to give this a try. Nonetheless, to put a bow on this. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
In a couple weeks, I might be able to say, "Hey, I'm done with it." And guess what?
Awesome.
I went and binged on everything. So
yeah.
But
anyway. This is kind of a trend that I see, and I leech it into technology because a lot of tech folk try out these alternative ways. Like there's bullet coffee, and there's the Whole30. There's this whole movement of cryo stuff where like you actually work up your body to the point where you actually go into like these cryo chambers where it's supposed to do something for, I'm not a doctor nor do I play one on podcast, but I've heard that like people like Kevin Rose, like he experiments with this type of biohacking for better, faster, stronger stuff. And it's interesting to me. I don't partake personally because I like me my coffee and I like my luxury in America of eating whatever the heck I want pretty much. But props for trying it out, dude, and seeing what it does to you.
And here's kind of like one thing I discovered as I've been going through these processes. Kevin Rose, as you mentioned, and this other mutant named Tim Ferriss. This very popular
mutant. You mean that in a positive way, right?
I mean that in a positive way.
Okay.
Tim, you've got a best-selling podcast. You're a best-selling author many times over, and you just do everything to your body.
Right.
And I give you props. This is wonderful. But for me to do something like this, or for people to do something like this, the incentive is to make ourselves better. Mm-hmm. And so that leads me to think that there's something wrong with me. Mm. And no, this isn't going to be Psychology 101 where I'm going to be sitting on a couch going, it all started back when I was 4 years old.
I'll send the bill in the mail.
There you go. But we're not as a society happy with ourselves. And this is something that I'm dwelling on. I actually deployed a recent newsletter talking about who are you in competition with? Right. Is it with your podcast partner in crime?
Hope not.
Is it with your boss? Is it with your coworkers? Is it with your sibling? Is it with yourself? In a lot of ways, for me, I'm in competition with myself, which is very toxic and very dangerous because I will make myself do things that are not helpful. And by trying this in order to look like a certain image that I have, I'm way in the ditch on this one, the off-roading.
But no, it applies to what you're doing. I mean, it's all, whether you're doing it for mentality or physicality, it's all biohacking. It's discovery.
It's very important to look at why do you want to do something.
Right.
If you're going to be doing something that alters your normal state of being, why are you doing this? And if there's a reason because you don't like who you are, then that's another conversation in itself.
Sure.
But it's not like my wife and I don't like who we are. Yeah, I could tend to lose about 20 pounds. I got a bit of a gut in my mid 40s right now. And I don't have the handsome looks of John Cena from the WWF.
I would argue that. I'm pretty sure your wife would argue that.
Well, anyway. But we all would love to be something that we're not. And is it food? Is it eliminating something so we could be that image we have in our head? Is it having this technology device that would make us seem like we're the ones dancing in the commercials that we see on TV?
Careful, you're crossing into that lifestyle branding that everybody seems to be doing.
I don't know what I'm talking about, but for those of you out there that are thinking about it, I will try something for a month. And actually, Leo Babauta, who did ZenHabits.net, one of my early influences in this whole minimalist thing and such, he would go without something for a month just to see and write about it, of course. And he had a large following. And for those of you that are listening in, thank you for following us and listening in. But, try it out. See how you feel after a day, after a week. And if you don't want to do it, there you go. So that's all I got to say about that.
Cool.
Tune in on a future episode coming up about how the Whole30 ends.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's right.
So, it's time for one of my favorite segments, Chris.
Yes.
It is time for Tech That Caught Our Eye.
Dun, 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 dun. Tech That Caught Our Eye.
Yeah.
Okay,
so if there's anybody listening that does jingles, please send us a DM. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at AJ Barce, and Chris is at MNMLTEK. He's so minimal, he hates vowels. We need a jingle.
What's some tech that's caught your eye, AJ? Let's keep this train forward.
So, of course, it's going to be revolving around something that straps on your wrist. And normally, it's something that's mechanical. And I usually say something witty and usually half-hearted against these smartwatches. Well, today that changes. It's still going to be witty, but it's not going to be quite against a smartwatch. It's actually going to be for a smartwatch.
Go on.
I thought I would get your attention. And I think before I sent you the link in our show notes, you had not seen this Kickstarter before, correct?
I had not.
I hadn't either. I stumbled on this. I don't think the watch presses even have gotten a hold of this yet, like Warren Wound and all thems yet. I accidentally stumbled on this Kickstarter. So I don't know how I found out about it. I just went down the internet rabbit hole. It's called SEQUENT, SEQUENT, and they are quoting themselves as the world's first Kinetic self-charging smartwatch.
Well, that's an equation for all the things that fit in your Venn diagram.
Exactly. So here's a little bit of mechanics 101 when it comes to watches. And we talk about this on the show. Like, you are still rocking your SKX 007. So am I. These are automatic movement watches, meaning there's a little rotor that's weighted and it spins around. And as we move, it generates energy by way of conserving it into a spring. It winds a spring. And then as we are, not talking with our hands like as good Italians, it runs off the energy of the spring. That's the whole concept behind watches in general. It's just a spring using it as energy. There is another kind of movement called quartz, which runs on a battery. Mm-hmm. And I believe Seiko is attributed to the bulk of the technology that comes out of what they call hybrid movements, which is a rotor from an automatic movement that generates the same power, but through electric means of a capacitor or battery. So as you wind, it charges like a dynamo, and it charges it looks like a watch battery. It's about the same size as a watch battery, but it's a capacitor. It stores energy and then releases it and when your watch ticks.
So the Seiko has the Honda Prius or the Toyota Prius and the Honda Insight.
Yeah.
Kind of guts under the hood.
Yeah. So if you see a Seiko watch that doesn't say automatic and doesn't say quartz, and it says this thing called Kinetic, it's a hybrid. A lot of third party manufacturers will call their hybrid watches, which pretty much, I'm pretty sure they source from Seiko. They'll use a Seiko Kinetic movement. These guys are not, or at least I have not been able to find out what their movement is. A lot of their stuff is still patent pending, but they are based out of Luzern, Switzerland, and I got a link in the show notes. But as of the time of this recording, they're asking for I think it was 83,000 for their goal. And there's already 166,000 pledged to their goal.
So it's 2x.
So they're on track, and they have 33 days to go.
Not bad.
Yeah, they already have 570 backers. And again, I like to put out the disclaimer that Kickstarter is not a store. Sometimes Kickstarters don't come to fruition. So bear in mind, when you back a Kickstarter, you may not see the goods. You've seen some articles that people have been very disappointed. I'm not endorsing these folks. It's just tech that caught my eye. So that's my little disclaimer.
Caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware. It's a Latin phrase.
Yep. Let the buyer beware. But looking at this, if you look at SEQUENT, and you can just Google SEQUENT Kickstarter, they have this, quote, ergonomic design, where if you actually pull down the numbers, you're looking at a watch that is 42.5 millimeters by 46.8 millimeters by 14.8 millimeters thick.
Once you get above 45 millimeters, and I've been part of the Big Boy Watch Club for a while, once you get above 45, that's starting to get into the sundial territory, right?
It can. So the dimension, the first dimension is basically from the diameter of the watch itself. The second one is lug to lug, so it's coming from the top of the watch to the bottom of the watch. So by comparison, in case listeners are trying to figure out metric because it's a little bit goofy, if you're familiar with an SKX 007, I have the measurements to compare it. Basically, it is the same width as a SKX 007. The length, it is 0.8 millimeters longer than an SKX. So that should give you a basis of comparison. The thickness, however, because it is stacked with an automatic like movement with smart technology. That's right. This thing is charging your watch as well as giving you a Bluetooth connectivity, GPS, checking your heart rate, and everything else that you're used to on a smartwatch. It does stand a little bit thick. It stands at about 14.8 millimeters, I'll say 15 millimeters thick, where our SKX is a little over 13.25 millimeters thick. So it is a little bit chunky in my opinion. If you want something that it compares in the smartwatch world, because it is the mix of the two, an Apple Watch 2, 42.4 by 36, because it's a square, or a rectangle-ish square. But it stands 11.4 millimeters thick.
It's always svelte and thin.
Apple always goes full razor blade thin. So I've got those numbers in the show notes if you're driving and you're like, I can't quite see these measurements, guys. It's in the show notes. It's an interesting design. It basically, if you look at the watch dial, it does come in black and black.
Of course it does.
As well as various other colors.
As well it should.
I would hope so as well. It also comes with some cool strap options and such, using traditional spring bars, so there's no proprietary stuff like Apple. Yes, that was a slight jab. But what I find interesting about this is, and I told you this off the mic, is about 2 years ago, I was sketching, like, what would be a cool thing if we could get smartwatches and get an automatic, how would that look? And I sketched out roughly what this thing looks like. Short of the dial. I have a better version of the dial in my book, but that's my opinion. SEQUENT, oh well. But you get a heart rate sensor, you get GPS, you get notifications, you get Bluetooth, and the dial is all analog. You have hands. And they're bi-directional, so like if you're familiar with like a Withings where you push the button, they'll go in different directions and such. You get 50 meters of water resistance, and it's not loomed, meaning it doesn't glow in the dark yet. If they break 500,000, you'll get that option if you're a backer.
Hoorah, that's impressive.
Yeah. Now here's the crazy thing. Early bird, which there are still some available, $198 USD.
Not bad.
The future retail, they estimate it's going to be about $440. So even at that price, and again, they are a Swiss-based company. It is not stamped Swiss made on the dial. So again, I don't know where they're sourcing their parts, or if they're doing collaborative stuff. But again, the fact is, for I don't know how many episodes that I have been balking at the smartwatch movement, I've always said, like, I am not going to take my watch off and charge it at my nightstand and then, or forget, and then the next day not be able to tell the time. That makes that tool inefficient. This potentially can nuke my argument. Like a smartwatch that can give me tracking, which a lot of people talk about, like, oh, I use a smartwatch because I want my steps. Okay, there you go. It can tell the time. It'll tell you all the stuff that if you get a notification. Now, there's no screens on this. It's not a touch screen. It's a real dial on a real watch. Yeah, right. It's not distracting.
I don't want to touch my watch face. It gets smudgies on it.
Right. So again, like it is a vastly different experience than what you're expecting with a Android watch or an Apple Watch. This is a real watch with a real dial, with a real movement, but it gives you the benefits that everybody usually says that they want in a smartwatch. So it's caught my eye. I'm not backing it, full disclosure. I'm keeping my eye on it. But that's just because of my preference. I don't like the dial. That's just my thing.
Well, I think it's appropriate to give an official BPM "You Go Boy" to those at SEQUENT for doing something to try to be a competitor to Apple and to also show the Swiss watchmakers, hey, we can combine both. Yeah. It's chocolate and peanut butter in one.
Yeah. One thing I do like about their design, though, they have this like old school 1970s like bubble domed crystal. I don't know if it's a plexi or if it's a glass or sapphire, but it looks cool. Like I do like that about it. But yeah, I was just really intrigued that finally somebody looked at a kinetic drive movement and put it in a smartwatch.
It is worth a look. Kickstarter SEQUENT, SEQUENT.
Yeah.
If anything, just to kind of get an idea of where the future might be for our wearable technology. And, now that Jawbone has taken a nosedive in which a $3 billion industry is now shuttering. I'm sorry, Jawbone. I was a fan.
Yeah, you were.
I publicized you quite some time. Fitbit's under litigation. And, everyone's in the battle. It's the 75th annual watch games. And all of these tributes are completely just like destroying each other. And who's going to end up being victorious? And, this could be a great contender.
Exactly. Well, because it brings something that at least every wearable person or smartwatch person I've talked to always gripes about their technology. Battery.
Yep.
Having a kinetic drive means you don't run out of battery as long as you wear it. Now, caveat, yes, watch fam, I do know that you do have to change out your capacitor and your kinetic drive movements every 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years because they get depleted. Just the nature of the technology. But we're talking about 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of battery life. If you wear it, it will tick.
Very good. Well said. All right.
What else do we got, Chris?
Well, that was pretty much what we got going on for this week. Not a lot of events. We've already had a national holiday in the past for Independence
Happy
Day.
birthday, America.
That's right.
And thank you, France.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. So, all right. I guess, what do you have going on as of projects with your Patreon and or other content creation?
But Patreon's going well. I have a new patron. If they're a listener of the show, thank you for being a supporter of me on Patreon. I'm currently still working my way through photos that I took over in Japan, and still working on some making them move kind of like Harry Potter using a cool new piece of technology. You can find all that information at Patreon, patreon.com/AJ Barce. Or if you just Google me, you'll find me in the first page of Google.
Yeah, if you Google my name, Chris Powell, you're going to come up with a really tanned, muscular, best-selling author, a TV star, like an extreme weight loss coach on ABC.
That's you, right?
No,
oh,
it's not. It's a guy down in Arizona or somewhere in the Southwest. Got wonderful guy named Chris Powell. But if you Google Chris Powell Bellingham, you'll see about 10 sites that are all about me. I've been working through the second year of Quiet Conversations and thoroughly enjoying that process. This week was about, like I talked about, who you're in competition with. And I think I'm up to tech tip number 57. Got to shoot straight, AJ. I had this wonderful thing about 100 tech tips. Guess what? It's pretty difficult to come up with 100 tech tips. I mean, I could go full blast on what I would normally do for getting your computer in good shape and install this.
But now that it's in good shape and it's bench pressing like 350, you're like, ooh, what do I do now?
I got to take more steroids, or I got to come up with other things. And so the tech tips are not as free flowing. Oh yeah, I should talk about that. It's like, I need to research on some things. So if y'all have any questions about something you have, a question about technology, hashtag on Twitter, hashtag BHAM as in marvelous podcast, Bellingham podcast. That's our hashtag. We monitor that. Hit me up with a question about something you might think would be a great tech tip. But otherwise, got that, and pretty much just enjoying the summertime. Been teaching some Google classes at a local community college.
Yeah.
And thoroughly enjoying that. But
Same here. I just got done teaching a photography class.
A photography class. And how is it being a technologist and an instructor?
Oh, I love it. I've been doing it for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Actually, no, this is 10 years. This would be 10 years this year.
You've been doing this for a decade.
Yeah. Either in media or photography or digital arts, or what else have I taught in the last 10 years?
How to be a better computerized digital citizen.
Yes.
And on that note, let's wrap up this show.
That wraps it up for this edition of BPM Tech. Thank you again so much for listening to us, rating us, reviewing us on the iTunes, on the Google Play, on the SoundCloud, or Spreaker. That's that funny one that says speaker, but there's an R in the middle of it. If you're in the Bellingham area, you might be listening to us over the air. I love the airwaves. Thank you, airwaves, for making me who I am. We are on KMRE 102.3 FM. Low power. Community radio here in Bellingham, Washington. From the city of subdued excitement, I am AJ Barce.
And I'm Chris Powell. Thanks again for joining us once again on BPM Tech.